I want you to picture a situation, and I am willing to bet it is incredibly familiar to you.
Well, I am sure it is.
So you were working on this massive project for your career, or maybe you are trying to reach a deeply personal fitness goal.
Right.
Or, perhaps you're just sitting on the floor of your kitchen, desperately trying to fix a jammed cabinet drawer. You want the results so badly.
You really do.
You put in the time, you exert the effort, and you just push against the obstacle.
But then the obstacle pushes back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The drawer will not budge. The client will not sign.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, you push harder. You try to force it.
Yes, you just throw everything you have at it.
You sacrifice your sleep. You
Yeah.
grind your teeth until your jaw absolutely aches. And you throw every single ounce of your physical and emotional energy at this roadblock.
And well, the harder you push, the more exhausted you become.
You get totally frustrated and entirely burnt out. You've somehow managed to become your own worst enemy simply because you wanted to succeed so desperately.
It is a really painful, heavy kind of frustration. It settles right in the center of your chest.
It really does. But here's the thing. What if I told you that the exertion itself is the actual problem?
That is a massive shift in perspective.
It is. Welcome to episode 11 of our deep dive series on the book The Obstacle is the Way. Today, we are completely flipping the script on how you approach adversity.
We really are. We are taking the core concepts from this book to establish a very specific mission for you today.
Yes, we are going to figure out exactly how to stop being your own worst enemy. We want to give you the exact practical tools to turn the very things blocking you into the things that propel you forward.
It really is a fascinating shift in perspective because, well, our default biological reaction to adversity is almost always to fight it directly.
Right, we see a wall and our instinct tells us to just start punching the bricks.
Exactly. But the ideas we are unpacking today suggest that this direct assault can entirely backfire. To understand why this happens, think about a medieval castle.
Okay, a castle.
Yeah, by its very design, a castle is an impenetrable fortress. I mean, it has massive, thick stone walls, heavy iron gates, and an elevated vantage point.
So the archers have a perfect view of anyone approaching.
Precisely. If you try to attack it directly, you are playing exactly into its greatest strength. You will exhaust all of your troops and completely break your own army.
And the castle just remains perfectly standing the whole time.
Yes, exactly. But if you shift your mindset and change your approach, the dynamic fundamentally alters. What if you decide to simply surround that castle instead of attacking it?
Oh, right. You initiate a siege.
Yeah.
You cut off their supply line.
You do not need to break down the walls. You just need to wait. You cut off their food, their water, and their communication.
That makes total sense.
And suddenly, by simply sitting outside the gates, that exact same impenetrable fortress becomes a prison for the people locked inside.
Wow.
The obstacle's greatest strength, like its massive, unmoving defensive walls, becomes the very thing that traps them and eventually starves them out. You are letting the architecture of the obstacle do the work for you.
Let's look at the mechanics of that, because that is a really profound visual. The sheer strength of the obstacle becomes its own downfall.
It does?
This brings us directly to the big idea for today's deep dive. We are talking about using obstacles against themselves, and the realization that non-action is actually a highly strategic type of action.
It sounds like a total paradox, but opposites really do work.
It reminds me of the mechanics behind martial arts, like judo or aikido. The entire philosophy is built on the premise that you do not meet force with force.
Right, because if a 200-pound opponent rushes at you, you do not stand there and try to act like a brick wall.
No, that would just result in you getting completely crushed. You would absorb all of that kinetic energy directly into your own body.
Which is exactly what we normally do in life.
Yeah, we really do. But in Aikido, instead, you step slightly to the side, you grab their arm as they pass, and you simply add a tiny bit of guidance to their existing momentum.
You let their own heavy weight and aggressive speed throw them to the ground.
You are essentially absorbing their power and claiming it as your own. We wrongly assume that moving straight forward is the absolute only way to make progress.
When sometimes staying put or going sideways or even intentionally moving backward is the best possible way to eliminate an impediment on your path.
You have to learn to flow like water. Water does not try to punch through a massive boulder in the middle of a stream. It effortlessly routes itself around the rock.
And over time, the persistent flow of that water wears the rock away into nothing.
Right.
That water analogy is perfect because it highlights the absolute necessity of adaptability.
Yeah.
You have to be ready to see that deliberate restraint might be the most powerful action you can take.
It takes extreme patience.
It does. You need to be willing to wait for temporary obstacles to naturally fizzle out. And we have massive historical precedents that prove how devastatingly effective this grand strategy of retreat can be.
Like what?
Well, look at World War II, specifically when Germany invaded Russia. The invading forces were operating on a strategy of blitzkrieg.
They expected a direct, highly aggressive confrontation.
Exactly. They wanted to meet force with force.
Yeah.
But instead of providing that satisfying clash, the Russian defenders utilized the sheer size of their own country.
And the extreme, brutal reality of the impending winter.
Yes. They just retreated. They systematically dismantled their own infrastructure as they pulled back, engaging in, scorched earth tactics.
Wow. So they drew the invaders deeper and deeper into an impossibly vast, freezing landscape.
Precisely. The invading army's supply lines stretched so thin they snapped. The engines of their tanks literally froze.
So the extreme conditions and the immense size of the geographical obstacle were used entirely against the invaders.
The defenders did not have to do the heavy lifting of destroying the enemy. They simply let the brutal environment do the destroying for them.
Okay, I do have to push back on this a little bit, though.
Sure, go ahead.
Because, well, when we talk about stepping back or retreating into the winter, it can start to sound a lot like a convenient excuse.
How do you mean?
Well, if I look at my own life, I am not fighting a land war in Russia. I am dealing with, say, two massive jousting egos in my workplace who are completely disrupting a major project.
That is a very different kind of winter.
It is. So is there a danger here that doing nothing and letting those egos tire themselves out is just a polite way of giving up?
That is a very fair question.
I can easily see someone facing a tough challenge at work or in their marriage and saying, well, I am just practicing non-action, when in reality they're just being passive, avoiding conflict, and hiding from the hard work.
Yeah, that is a crucial distinction to make. It is vital to understand that passive resistance is incredibly active. It is the exact opposite of laziness, and it is entirely different from giving up. Choosing restraint takes immense discipline, grand strategy, and rigorous self-control.
So it is a very conscious choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you decide to wait out a temporary obstacle, like those two toxic managers you mentioned, you are not taking a nap. You are vigilantly observing.
Right.
You are constantly calculating your next move, mapping out their behavioral patterns, and vigorously maintaining your own emotional boundaries while the storm rages around you.
That does require an incredibly high cognitive load.
It takes fearlessness to stand completely still when every primitive instinct in your body is screaming at you to do something, anything, to fix the tension.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Furthermore, there is a profound humility required in this approach. It means accepting that the way you originally wanted to tackle the problem might not be possible.
You have to admit that your initial forceful approach might just be entirely incorrect.
Or wildly inefficient. You have to swallow your pride and voluntarily let go of the need to loudly conquer the problem in front of an audience.
Okay, I can see the difference between laziness and tactical patience on paper. I understand the strategy of humility.
Good.
But, practically speaking, how do you manage the sheer physical reality of that?
What do you mean by the physical reality?
Well, if my career is on the line, or a major relationship is strained, and I am just standing still watching the storm, my heart rate is going to be through the roof.
Oh, absolutely.
I am going to be sweating. How do you stop the panic of doing nothing from turning into an overwhelming anxiety that just paralyzes you while you are waiting?
That is exactly where the strategy transitions from a mental concept into a physical practice. That brings us to the actual biology of frustration.
Okay, let's get into the biology.
When you face a roadblock, your amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain, immediately hits the alarm. It interprets the blocked goal as a literal threat to your survival.
Even if it is just a jammed drawer.
Exactly. It pumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. Your shoulders hike up to your ears, your jaw clenches, and your breathing gets incredibly shallow.
Your body is physically preparing to brawl.
But you are not fighting a saber-toothed tiger. You are fighting a spreadsheet or a stubborn client. Physical tension does not help you solve a complex cognitive problem.
It probably makes it worse.
It actively blocks your prefrontal cortex from thinking creatively. So you do not want to suppress the feeling of frustration. You want to channel that biological energy.
Right, because if you just let that anxiety sit there, it is going to eat away at your stomach lining. You have to give it somewhere to go.
Exactly. And this brings us to a critical balance that the ideas in the book call right action.
Right action. Okay, what exactly does that look like?
Well, right action is the specific combination of physical looseness with mental restraint. Let's talk about the how of this.
Please do, because I think we all need to know how to actually do that.
So, if you consciously force your shoulders to drop, intentionally unclench your jaw, and take a deep, slow breath from your diaphragm, you are doing something profound.
You're relaxing your body.
Yes, but it is more than just relaxing. You are actually sending a mechanical signal up your vagus nerve directly to your brain.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you are biologically tricking your brain into turning off the fight or flight response.
That is fascinating. So it is not just a mental trick, it is a physical override.
Yes, exactly. But there's a catch. Being completely 100% loose physically and mentally takes absolutely no talent. That is just recklessness.
Because you are not caring about the outcome at all.
Right. On the flip side, being physically and mentally tight is the definition of anxiety. When you are tight everywhere, you are brittle, and eventually, under enough pressure, you will snap.
So you have to find that sweet spot.
Yes. When you achieve right action, where your mind is sharp, disciplined, and observing, but your body is relaxed, fluid, and ready to move, you become incredibly powerful.
I love that breakdown of the vagus nerve, because it makes the concept of right action so tangible.
It is very actionable.
And if you want to really visualize this, think about how this physically loose stance drives your competitors or your opponents absolutely nuts.
Oh, it really does.
Have you ever played a sport or been in a high-stakes negotiation with someone who is just entirely physically relaxed?
It is completely unnerving.
They have this terrifyingly calm demeanor. Their shoulders are down, their hands are resting easily, their breathing is steady. It looks like they are not even trying.
They look like they are just toying with you.
Yes. That physical looseness makes you totally immune to external stressors. Because when you stop physically tensing up at every roadblock, the roadblock completely loses its psychological power over you.
It strips the obstacle of its intimidation factor. You are conserving all of your energy while they're burning theirs up in a state of panic.
Exactly. And this leads us to a phenomenal micro-habit that you can start practicing immediately to cultivate this state.
I love this part.
The habit is this: prepare for none of it to work.
That sounds pessimistic at first, but it is actually brilliant.
Think about what that actually looks like on a random Tuesday morning. Let's say you are pitching a huge idea to a new client. You do all the preparation.
You manage your perceptions and you direct your actions.
You build the perfect slide deck. But before you walk into that room, you mentally rehearse the word no.
You completely accept that the dice might just roll against you.
And you decide, in advance, that if you lose, you're going to use that exact failure as an opportunity to practice a virtue.
That is such a great reframe.
If the client completely shoots down your idea, your goal instantly shifts from win the contract to practice supreme professional grace under fire.
That is brilliant because it completely redefines the parameters of success.
It really takes the pressure off.
Ordinary people shy away from negative situations. They structure their entire lives around avoiding failure, avoiding discomfort, and avoiding the feeling of being rejected.
Which is an exhausting way to live.
It is. But great people do the exact opposite. By preparing for none of it to work, they remove the existential terror of failure.
And when you remove that terror, your body relaxes.
And you can actually perform better. While others are arrested by discouragement when things go wrong, people who practice this mindset are not.
They look for decision points.
Yes, and with bursts of focused energy, they break things wide open. By accepting that we cannot control the world around us, that we cannot force the client to say yes, we stop letting failure define us.
We turn daily annoyances into an advantage.
Because every annoyance is just a free rep in the mental gym of practicing patience, humility, or resilience.
It is the ultimate life hack, really. The worse the situation goes, the better the opportunity to practice your chosen virtue.
It is a win-win scenario.
This perfectly sets up a standout, transformative line from the text that I think really anchors the entire message of today's deep dive. I want you to really listen to this.
It is a great quote.
The quote is, "Sometimes a problem needs less of you, not more."
It is so good.
That is so profoundly counterintuitive. We live in a hustle culture that constantly screams at us to give 110%.
We are told to lean in, to grind harder, to completely consume ourselves with our goals.
And if you are failing, society tells you it is because you did not put enough of your own sweat and blood into the grinder.
But this quote gives you explicit permission to step back.
It tells you that inserting your ego, your anxiety, and your forceful energy into a delicate problem might be the exact reason the problem is getting worse.
It is such a brilliant realization. Think about the mechanics of a Chinese finger trap.
Oh, that is a perfect example.
It is a simple woven tube of bamboo. You put your index fingers in both ends, and when you try to aggressively pull them out, the trap tightens.
The harder you pull, the more trapped you become.
Your exertion is the very mechanism that locks you in place. The only way to escape a Chinese finger trap is to do the exact opposite of what your panic brain tells you to do.
You have to push your fingers inward, relaxing the tension.
You have to give the trap less of your resistance. That is exactly what this quote means. When you apply less of yourself, you stop providing the resistance that the obstacle needs to maintain its shape.
That is a phenomenal analogy. Less of your ego, less of your panic, less of your desperate need to control the outcome.
Exactly. And what is so empowering about this is that it is an infinitely elastic formula.
How so?
It does not matter if the obstacle is a minor traffic jam on your way to work or a catastrophic failure in your career. No obstacle is too big.
Because its very size and severity are exactly what allow it to be used against itself.
Yes. The heavier the opponent, the harder they fall when you step aside. You are no longer fighting the massive weight of the problem.
You are using the leverage of that massive weight to launch yourself forward.
Within every single situation that blocks our path, there is inherently a new path waiting to be discovered. The friction of the obstacle is exactly what gives you the traction to move.
The friction gives you the traction. I love that. You use the obstacle as a catapult.
You really do.
I want to leave you with this high-energy reminder as we wrap up. Your perceptions can always be managed. Your actions can always be directed.
That is completely within your control.
Even when you feel completely backed into a corner, you can always choose to drop your shoulders, take a breath, and respond creatively.
Absolutely.
Absolutely nothing in this world can prevent you from trying to find a new angle, except your own stubbornness. Yes, some things are going to be vastly bigger than you, but remember the castle.
That size is not a bad thing.
View every single blocked path as just a new path waiting to be explored. Do your absolute best. Be perfectly willing to let the dice roll and step forward with that relaxed physical looseness and sharp mental restraint.
You are ready for anything that way.
Take a deep breath, stop forcing the drawer open, and watch the walls of your personal prison turn back into the stones of a path you can confidently walk on. Please remember to like and subscribe to get notified about the next episode.
As you move through your week, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. What if the exact obstacle you are facing right now was not a random accident of the universe? What if it was a highly personalized curriculum designed specifically for you? If life is a teacher, ask yourself, what is this precise roadblock uniquely equipped to teach me that absolutely no other experience could? The obstacle is not in the way, it is the way.